very closely. Another statement that we are getting amid the growing tensions in West Asia. The U.S. has issued a fresh warning to Iran. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has signaled that U.S. is preparing major military action if the ongoing efforts to secure a deal fail. So it all depends on the deal between the two countries, and a warning that is coming from U.S. that if the deal is not made, if both the countries fail to secure a fair deal, then there will be a major military action on Iran very soon. A warning that is coming from U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at this point in time. He's also said that U.S. forces are ready to carry out the strikes on what he called key facilities inside Iran. And this comes a day after, in fact, southern part of Iran came under target. Many of the air defense system, the installations there, they were attacked as well. And he has also quoted President Donald Trump saying that U.S. would be hitting Iran very hard if Iran continues to reject the demands that have been put forth by their country. So many of the experts also believe that this was not about the downing of the helicopter yesterday. This was about forcing Iran back to the negotiating table. Have a look.
CENTCOM, Central Command, will be busy tonight because President Trump said we will be hitting Iran hard, and we will be. Because Iran has a chance to make a good deal, a great deal, to codify what they said they've been willing to do, and they haven't been willing to do it. So, as President Trump said, they've been tapping. You can see when someone's trying to tap on a deal. Instead, they're going to have tap bombs dropping on key facilities in Iran from the United States of America. And that's not because we want to restart anything we don't have to restart. It's because the War Department is prepared to set the terms to ensure that we get the kind of deal President Trump expects. CENTCOM, Central Command, will be busy.
Let me get you more perspective and go across to Matthew Wadham, senior journalist based in USA. Thank you so much for connecting with us. How do you look at the latest escalation between the two countries? And a warning you must have just heard that Pete Hegseth has given, that if a deal is not secured, then Iran would be hit really hard, repeating what U.S. President Donald Trump has been saying in the last few days. Many of the experts that we've been speaking to, they also believe that this has to do more with bringing Iran back to the negotiating table. Would you agree with that?
I think that unlike a lot of President Trump's threats over the last few weeks, which he hasn't backed up with action, it appears this time he actually means it, and that the United States, which has resumed hostilities against the Islamic Republic of Iran, is serious about inflicting some major damage on its enemies in Tehran. And so, it's pretty clear the ceasefire is dead. And I don't know why Trump keeps talking about, cutting a deal with the Iranians, because they're totally untrustworthy. They break every treaty they've ever signed. And, they're sneaky as heck. But it looks like the war is back on, and that the United States, it was the downing of that U.S. Apache helicopter, right, that made President Trump snap out of his, his Fantasyland stupor, thinking that he could just maintain this ceasefire without backing it up with the occasional show of force.
Absolutely. And now U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has signaled that U.S. is preparing major military action if the ongoing efforts to secure a deal fail with the country. I want to ask you about the statement that Trump has given time and again. Remember, he was asked by a reporter what is the definition of ceasefire according to him, and he has said that it means that shooting would be in more moderate manner. Is that something that we're witnessing in West Asia? Because there is a ceasefire in place, and backchannel talks were also underway, but now we can see that has been flouted by both the countries. The war, the phase 2, that has now started once again. Your take on this?
Well, Donald Trump's definition of, what a ceasefire means in the Middle East, or as you call it, West Asia, that was very slippery and I think sarcastic. And it was meant to show that, the ceasefire is a porous concept in when it comes to Iran and when it comes to the Middle East, and that you shouldn't expect too much from it. So on the one hand, he's been saying the last few weeks that he wants a ceasefire and that the ceasefire is very much alive and well and that a deal is just around the corner with Iran. But on the other hand, he's saying, wink, wink, I think there's trouble ahead. So I think he was telegraphing that when he suggested that the definition of ceasefire, was variable in the Middle East.
Absolutely. Stay on with us. In fact, let's once again listen into what U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has to say on this.
Those strikes that'll happen tonight will be strong. They will be clear. If they happen tomorrow night, they will be strong and they will be clear. And throughout, Iran has an opportunity to make a deal. That's the point. President Trump is a deal maker, the best in the world. He's prepared to make that deal. Iran would be wise to take it. Otherwise, they would have to deal with the types of plans that I just had a chance to see inside Central Command. Those strikes that'll happen tonight will be strong. They will be clear. If they happen tomorrow night, they will be strong and they will be clear. And throughout, Iran has an opportunity to make a deal. That's the point. President Trump is a deal maker, the best in the world. He's prepared to make that deal. Iran would be wise.
All right, with that, we have another breaking update coming in. Amid the growing tensions in West Asia, the U.S. military has announced a fresh wave of strikes on Iran. In a major statement on social media, U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, has said that additional operations against multiple Iranian targets are now underway. According to the U.S. military, the strikes were launched in response to the continued aggression by Iran, is what has been stated. CENTCOM has said that attacks are being carried out under the direct orders of President Donald Trump, with the targets selected at the Commander-in-Chief directions. The announcement, remember, just comes hours after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth warned that powerful American strikes could hit key facilities inside Iran. He said that U.S. was prepared to use military action if there is no deal between the two countries. U.S. official at this point in time, they're saying that the latest operation is aimed at degrading the military capabilities of Iran and targeting the infra linked to command surveillance and a defense operation there. Let me once again go back to Mr. Matthew on this. Sir, since you are from, you're a senior journalist from USA, you know the ground reality. How are people there in America perceiving this? Because many thought that the war has ended, but now we can witness the second phase of the war, renewed attacks that we're witnessing in the region.
Well, it's so sudden, this is so recent, I'm not sure how they're reacting to it, but I think that if there's a possibility that this escalation by the United States is going to end the war, I think people would be quite happy about it, because the American people are not enthusiastic about this war. They don't think it was sold to them properly by President Trump. I don't think they really understand what it's really about. And if this is going to help end it, I think that they would look forward to this. President Trump is hurting in terms of his approval rating with the public, and the public is upset that the war has restricted the world oil supply and caused the price of gasoline at the gas station, at the gas pumping station, to go up, and that this is hurting individual consumers' pocketbooks, and it's also driving up the price of groceries and of anything that has to be shipped by, a truck that uses diesel fuel, which is made from oil, obviously. So anything that ends the war, I think, is going to be received positively by the American public. And if this has the prospect of doing that, I think people will be happy about that. As well as Americans don't like the idea of being pushed around by a second-rate foreign power like Iran, and they don't like the idea that Iran can just shoot down an American helicopter and get away with it. So in that sense, I think people are happy that President Trump is retaliating, even though they're not enthusiastic about the war overall, if that makes sense to you.
All right, stay on with us. We have another breaking update coming in. Amid the escalation in West Asia, we're learning that fresh explosions have been reported across southern Iran as U.S. Launched another round of military strikes just a while back. In fact, the television media there is reporting that blast has been reported in several locations, including southern port of Bandar Abbas, as well as Sirik and Minab, shortly after U.S. military announced operation against multiple targets inside Iran. In a statement on social media, as we told you, CENTCOM has said that strikes were carried out in response to continued aggression by Iran, and U.S. military has added that multiple targets were being hit under the orders that have been given by U.S. President Donald Trump. And this comes amid the fears of a widening conflict between the two countries, and the second consecutive day that we're witnessing that there are attacks and the counter-attacks that we're witnessing. But at this point in time, southern Iran is under attack once again. In fact, the strikes follow the attack. Iranian attack, remember, targeting Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, the countries that host U.S. military bases across the region. And at this point in time, we're learning that the confrontation has intensified despite ongoing diplomatic efforts. Back-channel talks are underway. Ceasefire was in place, but now many of the experts believe that it has been flouted. President Donald Trump has repeatedly urged Iran to sign a deal to end the conflict, warning that Tehran would pay the price if negotiations remain stalled at this point in time. The latest military action that we're witnessing at this point in time comes just a day after U.S. launched strikes on Iran following the crash of the U.S. Army helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. And that is where the escalation happened. An incident, in fact, Donald Trump blamed on the Iranian regime. And despite weeks of military pressure, Iran has signaled it is not prepared to negotiate under threats, something that Iran has been saying for so long. Let me once again go back to Mr. Matthew on this. Where do you see this headed? Because there is escalation. What next, according to you, when it comes to another escalation that we're witnessing in the region?
Well, Donald Trump has said that the U.S. is considering hitting power plants and infrastructure within the interior of Iran. So all these things are a possibility. There's been talk of invading and taking over Karg Island, but I suspect that's too problematic and difficult, and it's not going to happen. There's also talk that the U.S. government will hit oil facilities and cripple in an attempt to cripple Iran's economy. It's pretty weak as it is, but it's still chugging along to an extent. And so there's all sorts of things that the United States could do to devastate Iran and to force them to into compliance with the U.S. demand that they give up their efforts to develop a nuclear weapon. So you could have all sorts of other things. I have not heard anything about actual boots on the ground and ground invasion by the United States, which I think would make a lot of sense. But it seems that the powers that be in America are opposed to that. And the leading opponent of that idea is President Trump, who ruled it out many weeks ago.
Absolutely. Stay on with us. In fact, let me take our viewers through what has happened in the last 24 hours, a recap of the recent developments. For a second day, the U.S. military's Central Command has announced that it has carried out self-defense attacks throughout Iran. In response to the most recent U.S. strikes on Iran, the country's senior military leadership has announced that the Strait of Hormuz has been completely closed. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy has said that it has targeted 2 offending vessels attempting to navigate through the Strait of Hormuz. And also, according to Iranian media at this point in time, the sounds of blasts and the activation of the air defense system, they are being heard throughout southern Iran as well as in the western part of Tehran as well. Following the regional developments, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad at this point in time has issued a safety warning urging American citizens to keep a high level of vigilance and monitor local news updates. So a lot is happening there in West Asia. For a second day, the U.S. military Central Command has announced that it has carried out self-defense Iran's attacks in southern part of the country that we're witnessing for the second day. With that, we have another breaking update coming in. It is version versus version amid the conflict after Iran claims Hormuz has been shut. US has now fact-checked, saying that Iran's Hormuz claim is completely false. Ships continue to transit via the Strait of Hormuz. So that's a big update that we're getting at this point in time, a claim and a counter-claim that is coming from both the countries. Remember, on one hand, Iran has been saying that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Now, a counter has come in from U.S. Central Command, wherein they have said that no, it is open. In fact, many of the ships continue to pass through that key waterway, and a fresh war of claims and the counter-claims that we are witnessing over the key waterway, that is the Strait of Hormuz, amid the escalating U.S.-Iran conflict. Iran's IRGC has claimed that the Strait of Hormuz has been shut following the U.S. strikes, and also warned that vessel attempting to use the waterway could also face military action. But now a counter coming in from U.S. They have strongly disputed this claim, saying that commercial ships continue to transit in and out of this crucial waterway that is the Strait of Hormuz. Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew, for connecting with us and putting that into perspective. With this, a very short break. More news and updates on the other side.